So Wales have made history. Sadly, though, it's not the history that we wanted to make. No wins in a calendar year since 1937. We tried to take the positives from Wales versus South Africa. We also round up the latest news in Welsh rugby, and we look ahead to the return of the URC. All that and more on the WRRAP podcast. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the WRRAP podcast. I'm Jamie, and joining me as always is James. Hello, James.
Hello.
Harley is back with us this week. Hello, Harley.
Bonsoir, mes amis. After after my work trip into Paris, hard life and all that. So as penance, I had Mola ripped out on Friday. So I will, thankfully for some fans, be keeping very quiet.
Well, it's nice to have you back with us. And filling in for Lee this week, we have Christian from the Welsh Sports Podcast. Hello, Christian.
How's it going? All right. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. Right, let's get straight into it because there's a lot to get through. Start with news desk. So it was the WRU AGM on Sunday. Main takeaways from that is review of the autumn internationals and Warren Gatland is to be delivered to the board by December the 17th. Nigel Walker's position is to be looked at. Are we still in the job? Quite frankly, I have no idea, but his position is going to be looked at. The strategy for the game in Wales that was supposed to be released in June this year, well, that's not going to be announced now until 2025. Other takeaways include 4 regions. It's definitely the plan going forward. So that's bad news for those who've been howling for a team to be cut in the media and on social media. An Anglo-Welsh League is off the table. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And the playing budget is to increase next year. So the regions are expected to have a playing budget of 6.5 million in 3 years' time. So at the moment, they're on 4.5. That's going to go up to around about 5 million next season. But in 3 years' time, they hope to have 6.5 million, which is still behind the rest. Let's be honest, especially the Irish. But it's better than what we're currently operating on, isn't it? So
what Abby Tierney said is that 6.5 million is what Glasgow won the league on. And if I say 6.5 million probably went on Sione Tuipulotu's wages, let alone that squad. So I don't know. I want to know what creative accountancy she's been looking at.
Yeah, do we really think Glasgow had a budget of 6.5 million? I suspect it's slightly more than that. I would suspect. But what do we think of those takeaways then as a whole from that AGM? But what else stands out to you?
There was also the report of the loss this year for 7.5 million, I think, as well. So that, I mean, considering that before they were talking about the deficit being, well, I think at 1.30 million, now it's down to 7.5. So that's good. At least they've done something right. They've cut costs.
The issue though isn't this turnover. It'll be the next turnover. Because this time has only got 5 international games. So you got the 3 we just had, and then England and Ireland, which are big money spinners. So you're only getting 5 internationals worth of money, and even they won't sell out. So then the next turnover will be the interesting one.
But as was pointed out on some accounts on X and Blue Sky, there seem to be more pages dedicated to the Taylor Swift concert than to the regions. So I think those money spinners actually worked as well. I said this is me trying to be very positive, but I'm finding it hard.
Yeah, fair enough. Lano Del Rey is going to be playing the Principality Stadium next year as well. So more money if that's
big away day.
Yeah. Christian, any thoughts on those bullet points I mentioned from the AGM? What stands out to you?
I guess there's quite a lot of negatives, but I'll try and pick out maybe some of the positives. The fact that they've, again, committed to the 4 regions is a good thing. I know there's been a lot of talk that one needs to go, but I just don't see how that could work. All those fans you're going to lose if you do cut one. And then, obviously, knowing that they're not going to be keeping the current budget and actually going up as much as it's probably not going to make that much of a difference. That is a positive. But it's a bit of a farce with this whole this plan that they were supposed to be coming out with is now getting delayed till next year, did you say?
Yeah, so we should have had it in June, and instead they released like a bullet point presentation, and they said there was going to be more information released. It's supposed to have come out before the Autumn Internationals. That was the plan.
Yeah.
But no, it's been delayed to 2025.
Yeah, and right now is when we're actually really crying out for someone to just give us a clear bit of direction of what's going to happen and where we're going to go. But yeah, it's hard to feel positive. But I guess, like Harley said, at least the deficit has sort of come down a bit, so something's working. But it's still obviously operating at a loss, so that's it's still got some work to do there.
Yeah, absolutely. In other news then, up to 60 players aged between 15 and 24 will be selected annually by the WRU and offer an additional programme to accelerate their development as part of a new group of national interest. I think this is a good idea on the face of it, but we need a bit more detail, don't we, James? Because you've got some queries about it.
Yeah, I think the initial question, and to be fair, I asked these before the WRU press release, and some have been answered, is, what is the spread of players? Are we ideally aiming for 20 from each academy? Now knowing the age profiles, you go down to under 16s all the way up to senior academy. And, do you look for an even split of 20 per region? Are we targeting certain positions? Are we targeting particularly tight end, tight centre? But the press release did answer some of that. So what they're looking for in the selection process and for the players will be, so within positional age profile for the Rugby World Cup 2027 and 2031, what they mean by that is the WRU strategy goes up to 2027 is they want basically the current crop of players to be between about 30 and 50 caps plus. But with the younger players get to be within their age profile, deemed to be a standout amongst peers. So they're looking for outliers in age groups. So people who are young enough or are young but can play senior rugby to a level. So you think George North, when he came onto the scene, is in possession of a unique selling point differentiating him from his peers above and below in the pathway. So basically, if you're a big bastard, you're getting in the team straight away.
I was about to say, it's just, are they a unit?
Yeah, I suppose
wants units because he doesn't know how to coach anything but.
they're looking for players with USPs, a standout scrummager, big 6'8" locks. Finally, playing in a position of national need. So we don't know what these are, but we can assume they're tight head, probably in the centres. You can argue second row. We'll see. And then featuring on the national depth chart and succession plan, whatever that is. It's a lot of jargon. On the face of it, it's a really good idea, though. You've got to, you've got to come into, I think, from a regional point of view, you've got to be very strong and firm, and obviously you're going to stand up for your players. Ospreys have got, some good coaches down at the academy, former players who've been in that setup, and some who are probably in the national academy pathway. I can't remember what it was actually called, but where the likes of Cuthbert, all these ground their teeth when that was being paid for. So on the face of it, looks a good idea. Execution's another thing, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Good idea, but we want a bit more meat on the bone, don't we, to find out exactly what players are going to be involved and what the criteria is exactly. But on the whole, it's a pretty decent idea, I think. In other news then, Ben Carter's had successful surgery on his knee, but he's going to be out until February. So Carter suffered the injury on Wales duty, but he's now tagged in the return in February when the Dragons play Glasgow and Zebre during the Six Nations window. Big blow for the Dragons. He played every minute of every game in the first block, so they're going to miss him and his leadership. They got plenty of options on lock. I'm not too concerned about it, but it's still a pretty big blow. In the meantime, Dragons have appointed Angus O'Brien as co-captain, and they've announced that Harry Keddy, Aneurin Owen and Matthew Screech have been appointed vice-captains. So it's clear that TNT is trying to grow and develop this leadership group, find out who's up to it and who's not. So, yeah, disappointing news, and we wish Ben all the very best in his recovery. And then finally, there's reports in Japan saying that Liam Williams is expected to sign for Saracens as injury cover for Alex Good. So Kubota Spears have confirmed that Williams will not be returning for the new season. I guess if he does sign for Saracens, that would mean that Liam will be available for next year's Six Nations, which I'm sure Warren Gatland would be very happy about, if he's still Wales coach, that is, next year. But how do we feel about that then, Liam Williams being back in the UK and potentially back in the Wales setup? What about you, Kristen? Would you like to see Liam back in the Wales setup now, or do you think we should just continue with developing Winnett and Murray?
No, I think if he's available, he's got to come straight in. We're just crying out for some players with experience and some, players who've been there and won in the past. And he's obviously showed in the summer when he came in that he made an impact, and he's still capable of performing at the top level. So, yeah, if he's available, bring him back. I think it's good news.
Yeah. What about the rest of you? Having back
We're
for
not paying for him, I don't mind.
Yeah.
That.
It's a fair point.
It's double-edged sword, really, because you've got to think he's been out for a while. Like, is he going to offer, apart from experience, which is obviously, what this Wales team are crying out for, what are we doing to progress the team in that sense? Because if you think now, right, your fullbacks are going to be, say, Cam Winnett, Blair Murray, with Jacob Beetham maybe third choice, right? And then you've got some outliers, maybe a Max Nagy, who knows, right? Is Liam Williams coming in and playing, progressing them, or is it just stalling development? This Liam Williams we've got now is fantastic, but he's not the Liam Williams of 2019, or he's not the Liam Williams that we've known and loved. He is very much on the tail end of his career. So I think if Gatland deems him to be good enough, get him in. But you've got to ask, what value is he bringing to a Wales team in 2025?
He was good against Australia, to be fair, though. He was good in the Australia tour, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Give him credit where it's due. What was you going to say, Ali?
So for me, you've got to answer. For me, the first question, to answer James's question, the first question you'll ask is, what's the point in the Six Nations for Wales? Is it a win-now tournament for us, which is what Gatland basically said when he was asked about his resignation during the last Six Nations? In which case, then, halting development probably doesn't really matter. We basically, if he's a better fullback, if he's playing better than Cam Winnett, who's at the moment the first choice, then you get him in. I mean, Cam Winnett showed that how he is still quite green behind the ears, particularly defensively. He's got a lot of good aspects to his game, but he was he was hung out to dry a lot by other members of the team, just the sheer number of situations he ended up in that. But experienced fullbacks like Liam Williams and Lee Half playing before him were able to cover for it. And Cam is still developing that aspect of his game and knowing where to be in the right place. A lot of the issues I've found with Winnett's defence is usually he's just in the wrong place to begin with. And then it just means he can't get there to make a decent tackle. So then you want Liam Williams. Now, if you're there purely for development, if he's coming in, he was there during this autumn to help with training. So if he was going to impart knowledge, then he was doing that. So then you've got to ask then, did that help Blair Murray and Cam Winnett? Then great, bring him back in. But as I said, it all starts around with what is your aim during Six Nations? And then you sort of work it around that.
I think just having like an extra leader on the pitch, especially in that back line, that's just so green. Like once they took Anscombe and Thomas Williams out in this autumn, there was just no caps in the back line. I think just having someone there to, maybe calm things down when it's a bit frantic, and I think it's useful, to be honest.
Yeah, they're good points. Like I said, I thought he was good on the Australia tour. I still think he's got plenty to offer at test level, and he does bring experience, so I can understand why he'd come straight back into the test field. But we will wait and see. Right. Oh dear. Let's talk about Saturday, shall we? Wales 12, South Africa 45. So what does that mean now? So that means it's now 12 test match defeats in a row, and it's the first time since 1937 Wales have not won an international test match in a calendar year, although there was only 3 test matches in 1937, but the stat is there and it still stands. I think it sums up how bad Welsh rugby is now, where I watched that game and I knew exactly what to expect. And I come out of it at the end and I'm thinking, do you know what? That wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Even though we were absolutely pumped and it was very one-sided, that score could have and probably should have been a hell of a lot worse than it was. And I think for us to keep, I know it sounds really defeatist to say this, but to keep that South Africa team under 50 points, I think it's a bloody good effort by Wales. And you can't fault the effort. They tried so hard, didn't they? To be fair, they put in some huge defensive sets. You cannot question the commitment and effort of endeavour of this Wales team. It's just that the quality isn't there, especially to be taken on teams like South Africa. We just aren't up to it at the moment, but you can't fault the effort. Let's come to you then, Harley. What did you make of that game on Saturday? Was it better than you expected? Because it was for me.
I'd rather go back through having my wisdom tooth physically cut out of my jaw again, because I was watching that game and thinking back to even the Pivac, that Pivac South Africa game in 22. Like, I'm just thinking how, yes, we've lost a fair few players, but just how toothless we were. I mean, 82 post-contact meters. Like, that's beat. I mean, to be honest, the only team, speaking of 2022, the only team, the next worst team was us again, where we only made 92 post-contact meters. But, you know, it was 82 to 400. And I feel like the only reason the Box didn't score 50 is the Box got sloppy in that second half. You know, I think they were more uncharacteristic. Yes, there were some huge individual performances. I thought Jack, Dewi, and Botham all stood up, hitting tackles over the line. But only 2 players made more than 10 meters. And that was Blair Murray and Jack Morgan. They made 15 each. It was just absolutely nothing to thought. I mean, Sam Costello was great when he was on, and then after that head injury, I don't know why he went off and came back again. I didn't see another head knock, but that's by the by. But it just looked like they didn't have a plan. All they could do was put their body on the line and tackle, which, you know, Gwyn Jones said on the Scrum Friday sort of instant reaction to the game, said, you know, that's what a player's going to do. You know, you are going to put absolutely everything on the line. But I just felt like there was no plan. There was nothing there that I could see that I could, you know, there were bits in the Fiji game and bits in the Australia game I sort of picked out and went, oh, I can see that working. If we can double down on that might work. This was just awful. The scrum just went backwards and not. I still don't get, like, I know Gatland was trying to give Archie Griffin the minutes he isn't getting at Bath, but this was not the game to try and give a young tight head minutes. Like, this was a game screaming for Henry Thomas.
He's not fit though, is he? He surely would have been in the squad if he's fit.
Yeah,
if he's not fit, then you can't face him, can you? No.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only reason. But they don't. It's not like they said that. So they've just made out as if he, you know, Gatland's just made out like he's trying to give these young players the minutes. But yeah, you just, you know, I thought we might have had a bit of reprieve when Exbeth went off early. But no, they got an even bigger bastard. But this bastard likes throwing the ball around.
Yeah, I have to say, I did feel really sorry for Archie Griffin because he missed 2 key tackles in the first 10 minutes. And then he got absolutely mullered in the scrum by his Bath teammate, Thomas Dutoit, who was playing at loose head. He's normally a tight head, playing a loose head. And he had to be taken off after 36 minutes, replaced by Azarati. He'll learn a hell of a lot from it. But I tell you what, I felt so sorry for him because he was folded like a deck chair, bless him.
He was looking up at the screen as he's in the air going backwards.
Yeah.
I was thinking, imagine what's going through his head right now. He's probably wanting the ground to just swallow him up.
Yeah, but he has been good. He has been one of the positives for Wales on the summer tour and in this autumn. But this test was it was too much. He just could not contain the power. What did you make of it then, Chris? Yeah, like I said, I thought it was better than expected, even though we were second best and on the back foot for much of that game. What was your thoughts on it?
I like Harley said, I think it was just better than expected because South Africa just sort of stopped playing properly, really, with all due respect. Like the second half, they were just throwing the ball around, and like the other interesting stat was defenders beaten, 46 defenders beaten to 6 by Wales. It's just like you can't even compete. Like you can't even compare this. It's just insane. The physicality again was obviously the glaring weakness. Same against Australia. It was always going to be, but it got shown up a lot, didn't it? It was just disappointing. But the weird thing is just it's become like accepted. It's like accepted now. I'm just watching the game, and before I'd be pulling my hair out, and at the moment I'm just like, oh yeah, well this is exactly what I was expecting to happen. But I've noticed, I don't know if you guys have noticed the same, a lot of positivity on like social media and a lot of comments on my video reacting to the game, and everyone was saying how positive they felt coming out of that game. And I just think that's mental to lose by so many points and then be positive coming out of it. I know the boys were brave, but like Gwyn Jones said, it's like that's a given. You've got to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was positive about it or happy. What I'm saying is I thought it was going to be at least 50, 60 pointer easy. Could have even been more than that. I saw some people being ridiculous saying it could be close to 100 points. When you looked at the disparity between the two teams in terms of the caps, the quality, I thought we were going to get absolutely pumped. And yeah, we were well beaten, but it wasn't as bad as I expected. And I know that the bar is low now. That's the problem.
Yeah,
the bar
exactly.
is so low that 45 points, you were like, brilliant. You know, well, not brilliant, but like it wasn't as bad as we thought.
It's
That's just where it is depressing, but that's where we are now. That's where Welsh rugby is. You know, I still thought the boys worked incredibly hard, and you cannot fault the effort and the endeavour, the spirit of this group of players. And I do feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
But like I said, we got no ball carriers. We're lacking physicality. We struggle to go over the gain line. The quality just isn't there all around the park, I'm afraid. James, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, as expected, I was just quite flat, to be honest. Like, my big thing coming out of the game is that Derry and Jack Morgan and James Botham are the standout performers for Wales. I maintain, and obviously there's a bit of Ospreys bias, and I'm not going to hide away from that, but I do maintain.
Really? That's unlike you, James.
Derry and Jack, but Derry and Jack are just levels above.
Oh, they're brilliant. Yeah, they were fantastic.
Physicality, in terms of skill level, it's no coincidence, that they're up there consistently on if you just look at stats, but their effort levels, they are galvanizers. I've come out of this autumn with the mindset of I'm not convinced by a lot of people at international level, and it may be a product of we've had a really bad autumn in a really bad spot, so players have probably looked worse than they are. I'm going to touch on the Sam Costello thing, and I'm going to try to be as sensitive as I can, because I don't want to come across as abusing the lad or anything. He had a good half, right? And that's it. He had a good half. Not some sort of amazing redemption story. He was perfectly good at what he was supposed to do. Right, and that's okay. I think he would have had a good game had he not gone off for a HIA. Just to
add, you can watch his highlights on the WRRAP TikTok channel if you want to see what he did.
That's the thing. He had a good half. Let's park it. It's not some sort of redemption story, right? He had a perfectly fine half. I thought Eddie James struggled a lot coming on. He missed the most. He missed 6 tackles, which again, isolated on their own doesn't mean much. But for a big guy, at 12, you've got to be making them hits.
Bear in mind now, Ben Thomas in the same channel missed 3 across the 3 games.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got to, because I just want to put out, like, one of the big things for a lot of people calling for Eddie James over Ben Thomas was, Eddie James is more physical, he's the better defender. Well, no, he's still quite raw. He's, yes, he's definitely got some game intelligence, but he's still not had that experience of senior rugby that Ben Thomas has. And I'd say he hasn't got enough experience as what he needs.
I'm not convinced by Max Llewellyn. I thought he was at best average. I thought Christians had got through a lot of work, but he's not physical enough. It's sad to see the decline of Will Rowlands.
Very poor autumn. I'm disappointed in Rowlands. He's been one of our star performers, but since he come back from France, he looks heavy. Yeah, I think he's had a poor autumn. Disappointing.
Yeah, it's as expected. Like, you come up against this machine, right? That's what South Africa are. They're a machine, right? They're so well oiled. You take away one part and you can replace it with a part equally as good. And you've got to compete with that. And you think, we see glimpses of this at URC level, right? We see parts of that machine against our teams, and you think, fuck, this is hard. Wait till you get to the international stage. So, going forward, I'd be very surprised to see the makeup of that squad in February, was it 10 weeks time? Because personally, for me, I've come out of that autumn, there's only three, that I'd be like, yeah, I'm nailing down, and that's both Morgan and Lake. I thought people saying, "Oh, Wainwright had a good autumn." Did he? He wasn't
He's
fit.
not fit.
He wasn't fit. Plumtree, I still don't get.
Too many dumb penalties is Plumtree.
Too many dumb penalties. He's got the raw athletic ability, but he's got Andy Powell's brain.
And you don't want Andy Powell's brain,
you don't,
let's be honest.
Right? Andy's a lovely guy, and I'm sure Tane is as well. We desperately need some size in that back three. Desperately. Yeah. I thought Blair Murray's had a decent enough autumn. I think he's done enough to justify his place in Six Nations, but positionally he's all over the place. Christ, that for that first half he was, he wasn't in the places he needed to be.
To be fair, great held up tackle on fast.
No,
give him credit.
Done his jobs really well, but I think positionally still needs work at fullback.
Oh, I agree. I just want to point out he did that. Credit where it's due. That held up try.
Dies. Harley's already mentioned Cam Winnett and his defensive blunders. Going forward, great, but all the power of a Victorian child.
That's something that's going to improve.
Yeah,
I hope he's going to improve.
And ultimately, he needs at a regional level. He needs time at fullback. So
he's been fast-tracked too soon, I think. Yeah. Winnett fast-tracked far too soon.
I think the problem was with Winnett was we had no Liam Williams. Lee Halfpenny was injured. There was no one else, and he was the best fullback when he got selected for the Six Nations. And it's a case of, are you just going to drop him?
He was decent as well.
I think he rightly got.
Sorry, he was decent as well when he came in. It wasn't as if he came in and he looked like all at sea. He was pretty.
Oh no, he adapted well, didn't he? He did, yeah.
This is not to say he's a bad player. It's just the fact that you're at fullback, you're the last line of defence.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when Wales are leaking tries in them wide channels, he's going to get found out more and more. And it's not it's a slight on the defensive system, but it also just highlights where he needs to be as well. So, summary as expected, I wasn't impressed with the majority of the squad.
Okay.
Can I just put in the one thing for me that epitomizes that game was when we had that driving line out and we called in basically everyone but
from the backs.
I think it was either Bevan or Rodri. I can't remember who was 9 at the time, and a winger, and it didn't move. And
the Ospreys gambit.
Yeah, and they didn't. I don't think the box used the full pack. That was it, part of the line out. Never mind the full pack itself. It just
they summed it up, didn't they? They really did sum it.
That was the game for me. That was just basically what this whole game was just we couldn't make yards, and there was no clever trick plays because Gatland teams have been underpowered before. But he's worked out ways to get around it somehow or another, and this just looks like there's no ideas.
Okay, I want to talk about the centres now because James, you mentioned Llewellyn there. Chris, if I come to you now, so I watched your review video that you did of the game. You were no problem. You were quite critical of Ben Thomas. You said that his defence was poor, he couldn't handle the physicality, and he's not the answer at 12. That was what you said on your video. So if he's not the answer at 12, and James, you think Llewellyn is not the answer at 13, what do we do about the centres going forward?
I don't know if I said it. I don't know if they said he wasn't the answer. Maybe not now. I do think he's looked not as sort of physical as he has in the league, which is obviously expected. I've been wanting him to play 12 for basically a year. I'm a Cardiff fan, so I have a bias. But seeing him week in, week out, he's obviously not the biggest 12, but his vision and just his rugby brain, he picks some great lines and he sort of guess over the maybe lack of being a big guy by just being quality, really. And I think it's almost it's a little bit like it hasn't translated to the international stage. Obviously, we're not getting front football, so that doesn't help at all. And I just thought a couple of times in defence, he looked a little bit like he was like flapping at tackles, not strong, getting sort of dominated at the collision point. But obviously, yeah, it's a tough one. I'm a massive fan of him, so I don't want people to think that I don't think he's good, because I think he's still probably our best option. And especially, like you said, when Eddie James came in, it's not as if he set the world on fire. So it's difficult. We've got like a lot of okay centres at the moment, but no one who's really like sticking their hand up to say, I'm going to be the man moving forward, isn't it?
But that's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know. Are any of you surprised that? Don't laugh when I say this now, because I was a little bit surprised. Are any of you surprised that Tompkins didn't get any involvement at all during this autumn? Not even on the bench.
He probably got lost. He, confused himself.
But in all seriousness, did it surprise you that he didn't see any minutes at all, given his experience? So we know Tompkins is a big ball, chaotic energy, but I thought you would have had some involvement in this.
Surprised because he was in the squad. I didn't think you'd bring people in from England to not use them in the squad, because usually the big issue with the English players is if you don't use them, they can turn around and say, "Oh, we want him for the Premiership Cup."
Do you think we could have done with Tompkins though in this series?
No. Come on now.
No.
I'm posing the question. So you don't think we could have done with him at all?
But equally, you can turn around and say, could we have done with Watkin, right? At 13, like it's all good asking these what if questions. Like, what if we brought in Tompkins? What has Tompkins done to say that he should be starting over Ben Thomas or Max Llewellyn? Because on form, and this is what we've asked of Gatland, is to pick players that are on form, right? He's picked the best back in Wales, trademark, and he's picked Max Llewellyn, who's been on fire at Gloucester, right? That's what we've asked of Gatland, is to pick players on form, unless they're called Morgan Morris, right? So why would you
fit the mold of 8? We keep going over this one.
No. It's a conspiracy. So what say is there to bring Tompkins? You come back to the baseball analogy, value over replacement, right? What value does Nick Tompkins bring over dropping Ben Thomas or Max Llewellyn? To me, he doesn't bring anything bar experience, but experience doesn't equal points. Because in that case, we'd win every game 50-0 with Alan Wynne-Jones on the pitch, right? That Nick Tompkins doesn't solve the equation there. What we found out now is that Max isn't a defensive leader that we currently need. There is no one leading the line from 13, right? Which is where Wales needs to employ their defensive leader. So what is going forward? The issue is, like Christian said, there is no one else really. You got Tompkins, you got Watkin. That ship has probably sailed now. Who else is there at 13? You tell me.
I said, Joe Roberts is the one I think a lot of us have been hoping for, but he's had a lot of injuries. Going back to the Tompkins thing, I find Tompkins and the way his chaotic way of playing worked really well with Bigger, who's a really stern, good old head, experienced 10. But as soon as he got chucked in next to Costello or any other of the M10s we've tried in the past, it just doesn't work because they're not experienced enough to try and rein him in. He's a massive ball of chaos energy. Like, he works best when you've got a calm head at 10 and he can just go do his thing, because the 10's there to mop up, which, usually what happens is you have a Maverick 10 and the 12 is the steady head. But he's just a ball of chaos. I mean, he must be great opposition to practice defence against, although clearly didn't work against Wales, because when you've got players who just are going to do something random you're not expecting, that's when you get your biggest test in defence. It's one of the weird things about playing your close youth side, because they're just exuberant and will try any old shit, and you're like, Watkin again. I think the problem with Watkin is his defence is unquestionable, but as we said, we've been lacking ball carriers, and I think that's where Max Llewellyn is coming in, because the one thing he has shown, his defence has been iffy, but he has been one of the few people punching that game line. And when they're bringing him in off short, when it was him and Mason Grady as a double, that worked really, really well. And then as soon as you lost Grady, we just had no backup plan other than to try and use Tom Rogers like Mason Grady, and it didn't work. Go figure. Cuthbert says he hasn't retired yet. Think we can bandage him up enough to be a wing?
He's too busy with scrum 5 years. He's too busy on the punter duty now.
Himself.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, when we look at this squad then as a whole, because we keep hearing there's talent in there and there's quality in there, but is there really the talent and quality in this squad? Do we think going forward? Because like you hinted at earlier, James, there's some players in there we think might not be international standard.
And again, it's not a case of is there talent being nurtured? I have no doubt there's talent there, right? Obviously, some of them players I don't think should be in the squad. I think maybe just regional level, that's fine, right? What you've got to ask is, are they getting the best out of these players? Look at Australia, right? Eddie Jones didn't pick Tom Wright. Was it Harry Wilson, Leonard Kitao? Joe Schmidt brings them in and instantly, unlocks his talent, right? And this is not me pinning the blame on Gatland. What I'm asking, is he getting the best out of these players? Right? Is he nurturing the talent coming through? Or is it a case of the regions aren't doing that, but clearly they're doing something because they've picked them for the Wales squad? So where is the link there? We take a look at a Josh Hathaway in that squad, right? I have no doubt there's talent within Josh Hathaway. I think he's solid enough winger. I think he's been good for Gloucester. I think there's plenty to work on. Can you honestly say he's gone away from, 2 Wales camps now and come back better player? Right? Is he come back, looking like an international winger, or does he look slightly the same from before, just with a couple of extra grand in his pocket? Right? Freddie Thomas coming in that squad, I think is a fantastic talent. I think he's really, really good. I think he's really
did okay, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he's really similar to Teddy Williams, actually, in the way he plays both. A bit showboaty, but can do the grunt work. Is Freddie Thomas a better player coming out of that Wales team? That's the questions we've got to be asking. Are our players going in and coming out a better team? Are they being better players? Are they being nurtured? Or, like we said last week, are they being set up to fail through poor coaching that is not unlocking the best skill set of our players?
Yeah, fair point. Any of you guys want to come in on that? Any other points before we move on?
I was going to agree. I mean, as for the Freddie Thomas thing, I think the only thing we'll see is just by watching him play for Gloucester, see if he has improved. I know when Teddy came back after the World Cup camp, so that, yes, he did make the final squad, he looked a better player for it. He looked a lot more physical. So, yes, he's still got a way to go, but, he's adding to his game. This season he's had to take on the lineup calling a lot more. No, it's not going well because it's a Cardiff lineup. They never go well. It's just something you have to accept. So, it's part of the heartbreak. But you can see he's adding layers onto his game, and he's getting, he is picking up that more physical grunt head. But, he's now got Josh McNally to learn from. He's got this senior head he can learn from. And I think that's the problem the Wales squad is. Lots of players haven't got the senior heads in the Wales camp to learn from. And then because of all the shitty finance decisions, they haven't got the senior heads to learn from in their regions. So, it's a bit like being thrown on an island with a load of plane parts. Say, go work out and make a plane and get yourself off.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point you mentioned there. What about you then, Christian? So, look, we know there is talent and quality in this squad, but is there enough talent and quality in this squad going forward to be competitive and winning games again, do you think?
It's a tough one, really, because before the autumn, when the squad come out, I was pretty positive, and I think quite a lot of people were that this looked like the best squad we've had for a while.
Yeah.
A few young players coming through. We were getting quite a few of the experienced players back. But what's been really disappointing for me is the more experienced players have just been so poor. Like you guys were talking about, Rowlands has been a shadow of himself. Anscombe just looked like a ghost out there at times. He looked just completely shot, and he's been good for Gloucester so far. So it's strange to see him come in and just be be that way. And then, I mean, like you had like Elias coming off the bench. He's got all those caps, but it's just capitulation as soon as he comes in and starts throwing the line out. And it's like, it's tough enough for these young players to come in and try and make an impact. But the players who should be the glue are the ones who are also letting the team down, if you get what I mean. I mean, Gareth Thomas has been excellent, I think. But outside of that, the more experienced players have just been, it's just a letdown, I think.
I think the
That's when
Elias,
you need to stand up, isn't
the
it?
Elias one is really interesting.
Exactly.
Sorry, James. The Elias one is really interesting because, once again, they didn't, to my knowledge, they were like 100% there or thereabouts, I think. But then they targeted Elias's lineouts. Now, I come back to my point last week. There has to be a correlation, because if they're not jumping and competing for Dewi Lakes, why are they jumping and targeting Elias's? Right? There's there's no it's happened 2 weeks in a row now. We have to question it. Again, you come to Elias. Is Elias adding value to that squad? Is it someone who is a senior player within that team now? Personally, I think if he was fit, Elliot D would be in there instead. That I think we're at a point now where you can put Evan Lloyd in. I actually wouldn't have been too annoyed if you'd put him in. I think Adam Beard was missed again. Not as much as Australia, but he was clearly missed.
Yeah, I say though, it brings me back to the point I made in the private chat before you guys recorded on Monday. What is Humphrey doing? Because every time Beard, or pretty much every time we lose Beard, or when we lose Ken Owens, we'd have to have Elias in as our number one hooker. The line-out would just go to shit, or just look for some reason. You'd be like, I'm going to try a new call system. All right, yes, it was a World Cup warmer. That's when you do it. But like, how do we not have any plan, any contingency for when Adam Beard, who, all right, yes, he's still a young man, but he is getting on a bit, and at 6'8", there's a lot of impact points. So he's gonna get pickup knocks now again. How have we not got a backup plan for when he goes down? Like, why is the secondary caller, lineup caller, not there, not getting the experience? Still, why is our pack constantly getting bullied? Constantly, and our scrum goes from being one of the best in the World Cup to being an absolute shadow of itself. Yes, right, losing like some certain players up, obviously, but it's just something that bothers me. And our ball retention is always awful, and the rucking never looks like. If you watch other teams, yes, right, you see a few get a win from the side and whatever, and that's how they win it. But they've done that because they've been so dominant that teams are letting them, and the rest are just playing off because it makes no material difference anymore. And you do have to start questioning, because we know Gats isn't the one who's going in day out doing the attack drills. He's not the one doing the defense drills. He's basically, this is how I want to play, and then it's the coaches under him. And there's a lot of heat going on Gatland, but and quite rightly, but this needs to be. We need to start talking about these other coaches, because stuff that was bad under Pivac is still bad under Gatland, and the consistency is Don Humphries.
Well, we questioned that last week when you wasn't here. I said, should the other assistants, and I highlighted Forshaw as an example as well. Yeah. So, you are right. Yeah. Maybe the assistant should be copied a bit more criticism at Gatland. Just before we move on, I want to give a quick shout out to Dewi Lake, because I think he's led by example. In his interviews, his post-match interviews, I think he's conducted himself really well. He looks absolutely gutted. He's very passionate. You can see how much he's hurting. I've just been so impressed with him. Particularly, on the field and off it. And I just feel sorry for him, because he looks broken. At every post-match interview, he looks absolutely broken. I think he's great. I love him. I'm a big fan of Dewi, but I think he's handling himself really well in front of the media.
You can tell the players get behind him.
Yeah.
You can tell he commands respect. He's been pegged for big things since he started to make that transition from back row to hooker. They've invested thousands of pounds in him, not just because of his talent output as a player, but what he brings as a leader.
I completely agree. Yeah,
And I've come under a lot of flack for constantly defending him for a few years now. Since his arrows were terrible. But people are finally starting to come around to see, the value he brings, and not to jump ahead to it, but the Lions, right? We're in quite a golden age for British and Irish Lion hookers. You got, the two Irish hookers. You got Scotland, Jamie George at England, Derry Lake here. So there's a lot of competition, but I still think he stands head and shoulders, maybe as that second choice hooker for the Lions.
Yeah, I think Derry Lake, Jack Morgan are probably the only two standout Welsh candidates right now for the British and Irish Lions, I would say.
Yeah, 100%.
Definitely. I don't see anyone else at the moment. But yeah, they've both been terrific. And like I said earlier, I think James Botham has been really, really good. And he's making a strong case now to be Wales's blindside going forward. So I'm very impressed with him. Shout out to Rio Dyer as well. Took his try really, really well in fairness. Lovely pass from Ellis Bevan. I was quite critical of Ellis Bevan last week. I thought he was poor, but fair play, redeemed himself. I thought he was very good against South Africa. He barely had the ball, Rio, but he did finish that try really, really well. That's what we want to see from him.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Pleased
chuffed for him as well, because he's probably been devoid of a bit of confidence, hasn't he? So that would have done him a bit of good.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to see that.
As long as he doesn't bring it on Saturday.
Yeah.
Absolutely needs to bring it on Saturday. That's the one time he absolutely does need to bring it. But we'll talk about that in a bit. Just a reminder that we are available on all the usual platforms, Apple, Spotify, and our YouTube channel, where we have now passed 1,000 subscribers. Thank you very much to those who've liked and subscribed. It does mean a lot to us, and it helps us grow the channel. So yeah, we really do appreciate that. So Warren Gatland, this is now 6 wins from 24 tests. We know his position is being reviewed. We're going to get a decision before Christmas. Will he still be Wales coach come the Six Nations? Ali?
Yes.
Yeah. James?
Yes, of course he will.
Why do you say of course?
Because who else is going to come in?
Well, there's candidates out there.
I know the WRRAP have come out and said they can afford to sack him if they want to.
It's not
right?
a factor, as Rabbi Tierney said, didn't
Yeah.
she? The money is not a factor. So,
but they also said in that time there'd be an interim, and we all know who that interim is. It's Rugby Chaos himself, right?
Mr. Howley, yeah.
So it's not a case of we sack Gatland and we get Pat Lam in and he's going to solve all our problems and we're going to win the Rugby Championship, right? Somehow. It's we're going to sack Gatland and we're going to have, his puppet. Let's not kid ourselves, right? We're going to sit through Rob Howley, Six Nations. I guess, I know we had 2013, but 2013 was a long time ago. Ireland lost to Italy.
2013, we also had 2017.
Exactly. Right. So, yeah, of course he's going to be coach.
Okay, what about you then, Kristen? Do you think Gatland's still going to be coach come the Six Nations? Do you think he should be the coach come the Six Nations?
I think he will. I don't think he should. I mean, a lot of this, you can't blame everything on Gatland. I know he's coming under a lot of flack, but I don't think he should. I think it just needs something different. Although I did find it interesting in his press conference when they were talking about maybe a move upstairs. I thought that might be a way they could get rid of him without having to give him the big payoff. And he sort of seemed like he was a little bit up for it, didn't he? He's sort of like playing with house money though at the moment, isn't he? Like he can just get away with not getting any wins, and then if they sack him, he can go fish on the beach and put his feet up.
Well, he's already said that. He said,
"Yeah, I know exactly."
Have a glass of wine on the beach is what he said. The guy is on 600k a year. But he struck a different tone, didn't he, in the press conference, I thought, on the weekend, because after the Australia game, he looked broken. He looked like he'd had enough. And when you listen to like the Scrum 5 podcast and other podcasts, the consensus was in that media room, he was done. He was finished. And Nigel Walker was there as well at the back in the media room. It was expected that he was, this was going to be his last test. But he seemed a bit more defiant, didn't he, this time around? I noticed a bit more chipper, a bit more up for the fight.
I wonder if they had like a quiet word with him, like, and said, "Oh, don't worry, you'll be around for the Six Nations or whatever." So he's feeling a bit more bullshit.
I think I was thinking about this on the train home earlier. there was an expectation, or not an expectation, there was a feeling that we could beat Australia.
Yes. Which was reasonable, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think
I don't think it was unreasonable at all, right? I think there was a chance we could beat Australia, match them, or even beat them in certain facets of the game. The manner in which we lost to Australia came at a shock to everyone. I was feeling that way. You compare it to this weekend, no one thought we were going to beat South Africa, right? Let alone be competitive in any facet of the game with them, right? We had the better anthem, and that was it. You know, that's the only thing we beat them on, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think Gatland come out and said, oh, I'm gutted, because I don't think he ever expected to win that game.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I think for me, right, what's disappointing me about Gatland since his return is the way he's tried to control the narrative and deflect and blame other people. When he made that statement, wasn't it, when he said, oh, I didn't know how bad Welsh rugby was. If I known how bad it was, I never would have come back. And you're thinking, no, hang on, mate. You spent the best part of a decade in Welsh rugby before you left. And you're saying you didn't know how bad Welsh rugby was? You didn't know the problems? Like, come on. You obviously did know, because he was here for a decade. And there's things like, throwing his own players under the bus in his Daily Telegraph comment, saying I've never in a Lions squad. Like, why would you say that publicly? Even if you think it privately, you don't write an article and put that out there. How does that inspire confidence in your players? He's blamed referee decisions quite a bit since he's returned. He blamed Sam Costello for that replacement howler, saying he brought it on himself to run onto the pitch. No, that's not what happened.
We're not fit enough again.
Yeah, so even this weekend, he blamed the conditioning of the players coming out the regions. Now, look, Welsh rugby's problems go far greater than Gatland, but let's not pretend that he doesn't, have any involvement or any blame involved here, because he absolutely does. I would say Gatland is actually part of the problem. He may not be the problem, but he's certainly part of it. And this idea that we just absolve him of any responsibility since he's returned because Welsh rugby's in the shit, I don't buy it. I just don't buy that narrative at all. I don't know what you think of that, but it's just the way that people like saying, "Oh, you can't blame Warren for everything that's going on in Welsh rugby. It's not his fault." It's like, well, yes, you can, and you can actually blame him for some of the stuff you said since he's returned. I don't think he's conducted himself very well, actually, since he's returned to us. And I'm a big fan of Warren Gatland. I rate him highly as a coach. I know we had Martin on last week, didn't we, James? And you were saying I never rated him as a coach and all this, but I rate Warren Gatland as a coach. I think he's really, really good. His record speaks for himself, but this second stint has been a disaster. It's not working. The record shows it's not working.
We've got to stop treating him like under the previous regime he was this innocent bystander.
Yeah, but that's the point I'm making. When he said, I didn't know how bad Welsh rugby was. If I know it, I never would have come back. He was here for a decade.
But
he was here
for. What's telling is the media rolling now, not turning on him, but holding him accountable as well as his WRU counterparts. Because in the eyes of the Welsh public, and an extension of that is the Welsh rugby media, is that Gatland is God, right? He's delivered us the golden generation, right? So he essentially became a bit infallible. So all these bad results, 6 and 24, some outlets are still like, yeah, but it's Gatland. Do you remember 2019, guys? Guys, remember Ryan Jones 2008? Like, this is the attitude we're getting. Whereas we have to be questioning: did Warren Gatland put in a succession plan? Right? It's sort of like a bit like American politics, right? And my background is in this. You got Trump, when he came into power, was ranting about how he saved the economy, when in reality he took over Obama's.
I like how on the Welsh Rugby podcast we're talking
this
Trump
is what
and
I mean.
American politics.
But then you highlight it sort of the other way around, is that Gatland 2.0 came in and said, I've inherited this squad of players with barely any caps because Pivac gave everyone in his nan a cap. Because Pivac had to do it because Warren Gatland caps no one. Does this make sense? It's a constant blame game of the person before. You've got now Trump coming into power and saying, oh, this economy is awful. Yeah, because he inherited it from you, type thing. This is what I mean. It's constantly a blame game with Gatland.
Yeah,
it's constantly deflecting onto someone else. You go back to the 2009 Lions tour, right? Him and Sean Edwards constantly blaming each other for things that were going wrong. Obviously, Gatland was forwards coach, Ed was defence coach. Right, he's the master at deflecting bad press and narratives, right? Because it's
controlling the
never
narrative.
yeah.
That's what he's done, isn't he? Control the narrative. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting what you were saying now, Christian, about the comments on your YouTube channel, right? I gotta be careful how I phrase this though. The casual fans, I don't want to say not proper fans, the casual fans, they seem quite supportive of Gatland, didn't they? The wider Welsh rugby public, because I watched the Welsh News a couple of nights ago when they were interviewing fans outside the ground, the Vox Pops. They were all supportive of Gatland, but it seems like the more week in, week out rugby fans, such as ourselves, we're questioning a lot more about Gatland, aren't we? We can see what he's doing. We can see he's controlling the narrative. We've talked about him trying to deflect and blame. I just find it's quite interesting how casual fans are quite supportive of Gatland. But then, like, I'm not going to say proper rugby fans, but obviously the more invested rugby fans, we're kind of like, no, he needs to go or he needs to wise up. Have you noticed that, Christian? And yeah, you talked about your comments there.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're spot on. I just think it's like they think because there's been success in the past, then he's a good coach, which he is. I mean, you can't deny that. It's just a matter of time before he clicks. But I think obviously we see week in, week out, we watch the regions, we see the state that it's in, and we can see I don't see what he can possibly do now to turn things around. Like he might be a brilliant coach or might have been in the past, but this group of players in this current iteration of Welsh rugby, he's just not the man to turn it around at this point, I don't think. I think it's all just gone haywire to the point where it needs something new to come and shake things up a little bit.
And that's the thing. I just think that if I could see a bit more progress in this team, I would think, well, let's keep Gatland because I think he could turn it around. But I just don't think he can turn this around. And I'll always appreciate what he did for Welsh rugby in his first stint. But we're kind of relying now on his past record, aren't we? Oh, look what he's done previously. But this is a new group of players. He hasn't got the players he had. He hasn't got the Biggers, the Foxies, the Jamie Roberts. He hasn't got that caliber of leaders and world-class players anymore. It's very, very different. Harley, what do you make of it then with Gatland's return? Do you feel that he can turn this around?
I'll never say never, but it's looking increasingly unlikely each time because every time I watch a campaign since part of the World Cup, it was once again overachieving. But I just don't see what he's trying to do from campaign to campaign, sometimes match to match. There doesn't seem to be any cohesion. He was trying to stick square pegs in round holes for a bit, with Ben Thomas at 10 and Grady at 12, and then he basically wasted a whole summer doing that, and then he went, right, fine, give up on that. Right, I'm gonna actually try playing these players in the positions. And then you try, it's a different thing, and you're just like, but you could have done this in the summer, and you could have gotten a lot of these teething issues out then, and then you start bringing them through. I mean, I will grant him that a lot. You did get a lot of retirements at the end of that World Cup.
Yeah,
and some of that is Pivac holding on to some players too long, and not but him basically the Pivac turnstile of just trying it absolutely everyone. Jim Botham waited 3 years between caps. Just because Pivac couldn't make his mind up, but then that's because Gatland basically stuck with the same 25 players. So yes, he did cap a lot of new players, and then a couple of the ones he did stick with, he did try, like Jonah Holmes and Alan Amos. They disappeared off. Jonah Holmes went elsewhere. There's 2 fullback options there. I'm picking there, and you're just like, so right, that's unlucky. But you're looking at it, like you say, Jim. If you could see something improving week on week, that'd be great. But you look at it and you start to wonder. Are they getting worse? Or they just stood still? I can't tell anymore.
What?
I agree with Jamie Roberts. So I haven't seen enough improvement to make me think that Gatland has turned it around. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but he did say he hasn't seen enough progress in this group going forward. But that's how I feel, to be honest.
What was really interesting, right, from being working and living in sort of the English game now and being not directly involved in the rugby side of it, but witnessing it, is the re-emergence of the England A side. So obviously they played at the Stoop the other day, right? And Mark Mapletoft did a really good interview beforehand and said, essentially, this side is for we now know we've got a crop of under-20s players that are world beaters, right? They're world champions and they're Six Nations champions. We've also got a crop of sort of mid-20s, really good club players who've got like 1 or 2 caps, okay, who can't really break into the squad, and we don't know what to do with them. So let's revive the England A, okay? What we should have done around the 2015-2016 season, right, is post that 2016 Grand Slam under-20s team, okay, is have that Wales A side, because then you could have made it up of overperforming regional players. Okay, so you look at that Cardiff squad from Bilbao, right? That would have had a lot of them players in there. You know, the 2016-17 Ospreys side who were doing really well in the scoring points for fun. You know, the fringes of that Scarlet title winning team, right? And you have a healthy selection of overperforming mid-20s, and you bring through the under-20s cohort, right? What we've got now is we've got under-20s players coming out of a system, playing regional rugby, or getting over promoted, right? It hints not a succession planning from Gatland, but from the wider WRRAP rugby strategy. You know, what is the strategy for our players? It's all well and good, and I'm sort of going back on myself actually and saying Gatland's not nurturing them, but they're also being over promoted way too quickly, right? And this is not to pick on him, but we come back to Alex Mann a lot on this podcast.
You do.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I
you know, we're not wrong though. You know, great player, great talent, but was over promoted too quickly. Got injured, and then was essentially told you need to pack a couple of kegs on of muscle before you could even think of competing at this level. You know, is a Wales A side, or whatever you want to call them, right? What's needed to help nurture this current crop of players?
But there was talk of that, wasn't it? Like 2 or 3 years ago, they were going to bring back Wales A. I remember reading the article in Wales Online, but there's been nothing since. Why hasn't it happened?
Effectively, they just did it to avoid the because when we got rid of Wales A, Wales under-20 became officially our capture side. Which meant if you played Wales under-20, you couldn't go play anywhere else, and that was why the likes of Callum Sheedy refused to play under-20s. So they thought by bringing back the Wales A, then they could capture a few more England-based under-20s, trying to improve that. Spoiler alert, it hasn't really worked. But there's been all this talk about it, and there are plenty of like tier 2, tier 3, you know, these sort of, you know, the bottom end of the rugby championship, and you know, in the rugby Europe trophy, who would kill to have a bit of game time. You know, like during in 2018, before as a warm up for the 2019 World Cup, Uruguay played Cardiff. You know, like there are nations there who would happily play club size or say so. They couldn't beat teams. You know, you don't have to try and sell out cap. You know, or you don't have to sell out the
Scotland
big
A played Chile on the weekend.
Yeah, was it in Scotland? Wasn't it? I think.
In the Hive.
Was the Hive? Yeah.
Go play against USA. Go play against Portugal. You know, give these players a chance. You know, we talked about how good this pathway program bollocks is, whatever they're doing earlier, right? That captures 15 to 21. What is there for the regional player who's performing really well, right? You can't tell me that an Iron Owen, a Morgan Morris, I'm trying to think what Cardiff player off the top of my head, a Rory Thornton even, you could say could be a leader in that Wales A side, right? You know, a Max Page, instead of over promoting him straight away, put him in a Wales A side. You know, help him take that half step up before he can go up there. You know, I think it's seriously worth looking into. I think now that England are bringing theirs back, I think we've seen it with Scotland got the A team. No doubt Ireland will bring it back.
Ireland have Ireland A and Emerging Ireland. Like they have like 2 development teams. Doesn't
Bring back the
necessarily mean-
Wolfhounds.
and then they still pick the third choice guy at Leinster.
Saxons versus
No, they
Wolfhounds.
can't do the Wolfhounds now because they're the Celtic Challenges team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The Hound Wolves.
Yeah. Christian, Wales A.
Yeah,
You think
100%.
we brought that? Yeah.
Yeah, something I spoke about ages ago now on my channel, and a lot of people seem to like that idea. I think it's a great idea. But the boys have basically hit all the points. I've gone not much else I can add, but I think yeah, it's a really good idea. I think it just, like you said, gives that step. Like Max Page, I think is a perfect example. I worry that he seems to have so much hype about him. He's going to get pushed way too quick, and I think we need to just let him develop at the regional level.
Give me Mike Ruddock coaching Wales A. Oh.
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh, hello.
Like you could see like a player like Dan Edwards go and play for Wales A, and you can see, is he ready for that step up in physicality and and just all round gameplay. So
players like Joe Westwood at the Dragons, Abby Ackerman,
Woodman.
Yeah, they'd be perfect for Wales A. They really would. So just to end this segment, then we expect Gatland to remain in post for the Six Nations. It's going to be a review, but we do expect him to limp on for the Six Nations, where we play check notes. Oh, France away. Marvellous. Doesn't get any easier, does it? Okay, that's the international stuff done. Proper rugby is back. The URC. Round 7. And it kicks off on Friday night. Glasgow Warriors versus Scarlets. 7:35 kickoff. This game has been screened on BBC Wales and Premier Sports. Now, Christian, you're going to have to pretend to be a Scarlet now on this. I know it's going to be difficult for you, or maybe it won't be. I don't know, because I know you standalone fans like to stick together, don't know. But how do you feel about this game then? Scarlets going away to Glasgow. It's a tough one, isn't it?
It couldn't have been sort of a worse one for them to pull out after ending the first block with a bit of momentum, and then you think, oh, a nice easy game at home to get them going would be ideal here, and then they drop Glasgow away on your lap. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see what side Glasgow put out and the Scarlets, I guess, with the internationals. But even with Scarlets being played well in that first block, they've definitely improved week in, week out. It's hard to see them going over there and getting much, to be totally honest.
No, you're not hopeful. It does depend, really, doesn't it? I mean, Glasgow do have really good depth, in fairness, but it will be interesting to see if Glasgow will have all their Scottish internationals back, and for all the regions, are they going to bring back all their Welsh internationals? But it's a tough one, isn't it? Fair play. It's never easy up there.
Ospreys aren't, I can tell you that, and that'll be the case with most Welsh regions if they played over a certain amount of minutes. They'll be on enforced leave from their union contracts.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? So, okay, fair enough then. Let's move on to Saturday then. So there is a Welsh derby this weekend. Cardiff versus Dragons RFC. So kickoff is 5:15. This game is screened on Premier Sports only. It's not live on free to air. Let's start off with you then, Harley. Your thoughts heading into this one, because I've seen Cardiff's block of fixtures. They got some tough fixtures coming up, haven't they, in this coming block? So I suppose this is one they really need to target and get off to a good start.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, this is one of our Cardiff don't have win strings against many teams. Dragons are the big one, and it's a home game, so you never want to lose the Dragons, and especially not at home. It'd be interesting to see how many of those players in the squad are rested. So there was talk about maybe Ben Thomas playing for this game, but then maybe not featuring in the Challenge Cup. Depends how seriously Jockey wants to take it. I mean, I imagine we'll see Evan Lloyd and Teddy Williams involved some way, shape, or form, as they didn't have any minutes. So we finished off with a good win against a much needed win against Ulster. The squad was starting to look a little bit beat up. I haven't seen any injury reports. I don't know if we've had any of those few injured players back. But in the training photos, it's nice to see that Faletau and Josh Adams are running around, although it does seem they're unlikely to play this weekend.
Yeah, according to Scrum 5 Pod, they said that, they're unlikely to play, but we'll have to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah. But it should be. It's always going to be. I can't type up for this game. Everyone knows my opinions on this. Me and Jamie, I think it's one of the few things we agree on. Now, this is the worst of all the derbies.
Awful.
It's just never a good game. It's always just niggling. It's never even fun niggle. It's just gritty. I mean, as much as it'd be terrible for Jamie, a repeat of Boxing Day last year would be great. It's a great way for us to kick off the block, but to be honest, I don't see it happening. I don't think it's just going to be back to the usual nip and tuck. It'd be interesting to see now Tier has got the reins. If that galvanizes the Dragons, or if it saying, my thought was getting that Connacht game, they just looked tired more than anything. Now a lot of that squad have had 4 weeks off, and they can be rearing to go. And, a bit more physical. So I doubt we're going to be able to just bully them up front. So I think there's going to be, if Cardiff don't play well and we defend like we have against Glasgow and Edinburgh especially, it's going to be a very hard day for us.
I mean, we spoke about this on the Dragon Slayer pod last night, me and Gavin. This is the Everton-Liverpool derby in rugby equivalent, because it's very one-sided. Let's be honest about it. It just doesn't have the bite and the edge and the rivalry of other Welsh derbies. It's a friendly derby, this is, isn't it? We're not really rivals. Yeah, I know we're neighbours, but we're not really rivals like that. It'll be interesting from a Dragons point of view, because obviously this is Philo Tiatia's first game in charge. So I'm intrigued to see what his team selections look like going forward. How do they differ from Dave Flanagan's? I mean, I've spoken about this on the emergency pod that I did, and I know you guys have spoken about it on WRRAP. I still find it a bit surreal that Dave Flanagan has gone at this stage of the season. I just don't know what's to be gained now by getting rid of a coach midway through the season when you've got no real, anyone to come in. All we've done is just shift Philo from defence now to interim head coach. So then that makes me concerned about defence. Is that going to suffer? I'm just not convinced that getting rid of Dai at this stage of the season is going to turn things around. I'm just not. And like Gavin said, it doesn't feel like there's a plan, because when they released this statement with Dai Flanagan going, they said they were going to announce further coaching changes in due course. And then Rhys Blumberg put out his newsletter, his CEO newsletter, and now he's saying we're not going to rush to make coaching changes. It's like, well, what was the point of getting rid of Dai? I just don't see why do it at this stage of the season. So I'm not convinced by that, but Boxing Day can't happen again. We cannot see it. I know from Cardiff fans would love to see it, but from a Dragons point of view, that cannot happen, because that performance was an absolute disgrace. No team should be conceding 45 points to Cardiff at half-time, or to anyone actually for that matter. It's just absolute disgraceful. It's not very often where I will call out players for lack of effort, because I think that's quite dangerous to do. These are professional players, and you don't want to be calling out players for lack of effort. But I felt that was one occasion where I could call out players for lack of effort. The body language was off for the very beginning. It looked like players didn't want to be there. So hopefully they'll put in a much more competitive performance than they did in Boxing Day, because that was completely unacceptable. And hopefully the injury list has come down as well. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I don't expect the Dragons win, because they don't win against Cardiff. It's just how it is. But all I want to see is a competitive performance, and let's see a bit of identity, because, again, me and Gavin talked about this a lot on the pod. We don't know what we're trying to do. There's no identity when you watch the Dragons. So it's a tough one to come back to, but let's see how it goes. But I think we all know what the outcome is going to be, and that's what makes it slightly depressing, to be honest, from a Dragons point of view anyway. And then moving on,
has to break at some point, though, Jamie. You never know. The hoodoo has to break at some point.
It will break. It will break. So let me give you an example. This is a football thing now, right? But I'm a Newport County season ticket holder, but one of the clubs I follow is Chelsea, right? And we had a winning record over Tottenham. We beat them for like 26 games in a row. Tottenham could never beat us. And then they beat us then in the League Cup final back in 2002. It will happen. It may take 25 games, it may take 30, 35. We will beat Cardiff eventually, but it's more likely to happen probably at Rodney Parade. than it is at Cardiff Arms Park. That's the reality. It's probably going to happen at Rodney Parade. The problem is the longer a losing run goes on like that, it becomes psychological. And Harley will agree with me, there have been games in this fixture where Dragons have been the better team and they should have won, but they haven't. They haven't got over the line. I think back to Boxing Day 3 years ago at Rodney Parade. We should have won that game. We were the better team. But it's sport. But sometimes in sport, the best teams don't always win. Look what happened in the first game of the season when we played Ospreys. Ospreys should have won. They were better than us. But it was a smash and grab. We ended up winning. Sport's not fair, but it's just how it is, isn't it? But it will happen, but I'm just not convinced it's going to happen this weekend. But
did you see Dragons uploaded the last time you won at Rodney Parade?
2014. Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't in black and white, to be honest. That's how long.
Hateful game that was. Christ, I remember watching that, and it was genuinely like, yeah, it was like two Elliot D, well, an Elliot D driving more and a penalty try. You know, I felt at home watching it. Don't get me wrong.
Landman had a brilliant game that day. It was absolutely howling with rain, wasn't it?
Yeah. Because it wasn't long after. Oh, was it? It was the BT Sport era of Welsh Rugby, wasn't it?
Well, it was all sponsored by BT.
Yeah. What a time.
They have beaten Cardiff since then. They knocked them out of Europe in 2015 at Rodney Parade. That was actually the last time that they beat Cardiff. But then, obviously, in the league was Boxing Day 2014. But like I said, it's got to a point now, I think, when you lose so many of these games, it does become psychological. And it's bound to play on the players' minds, isn't it? It's bound to. But it will be broken at some point. But like I said, I just have no idea when, and I don't think it'll be this weekend. Let's talk about the game of the weekend then. Zebre versus Ospreys.
Big one.
Yes, it's the big one. 7:35 on Saturday night, game live on S4C and Premier Sports. So you don't expect many Wales players to be playing in this then for the Ospreys. So
No. Spoke to someone at the club today. All of the Wales boys. I mean, I think we might have Owen Watkin. I haven't had confirmation of that yet. But yeah, the four that were involved. Obviously, Beard's injured, and the other three are not in contention at all for this week. So yeah, obviously we had that development game. So we've got Will Griff back, Fender's back, Rhys Henry's back. He was supposed to feature for Aberravon this weekend. Obviously, that game got called off. As in most games in Wales, we do always send weaker side to Zebre. Sorry. The games are always pretty good, high scoring. We came out. Well, why are you giving me the eyebrows, Harley?
Or was it the Benetton game that was like ended 10-0?
The Benetton game when they played their first team and we took out the kids and we lost like 18-13. The last time we played Zebre away, it was like 28-23 or something like that. It went down to the wire. So yeah, look, expecting to see some younger players. I think it'll mainly be you'll still have your Dan Edwards in there. So yeah, it'll be. We need a win, and I do hope we win. To take us nicely into, I think is it one more round of URC and then Europe? Or is it
it's Europe. It's Europe straight away.
It's one, then so it'll be to take us into Europe. We need that momentum, and especially with the big one coming up as well in a month. We need to start this block off nicely. It's still a banana skin, as Munster have found out. It's not a given.
No.
But if you judge a team by their last game, Ospreys were bad, but they were effective. Zebre were pathetic.
Have you seen a Zebre up for sale? Have you seen that news? The club are going up for sale. Apparently, the plan is to replace them with another Italian franchise.
Bring back Calvisiano.
Ironi,
yeah.
Remember Ironi?
Oh, what a team. Now we're talking. Ravigo, are they still around? But yeah, the game of the weekend by far.
Absolutely, that is our game of the week on this pod. Zebre versus Ospreys. Are the rest of you rugbyed out like I am? I might be in the minority here, but I found the last 12 months of Welsh rugby so draining. both on and off the field, everything that's happening, obviously
you know what?
Dragons and WRU. I should be really looking forward to the return of club rugby and, a derby, but I shouldn't be saying this to the Welsh podcast.
I am.
I'm a little bit exhausted by it all.
I'm looking forward to rugby. Like, genuinely, I think I'm so apathetic to the international game at the minute, as I have been for a while, that I don't revel in Wales lose or anything like that. I'm a proud Welshman, but I'm also not. I'm not hung up on the results. Obviously, I spend a lot of time with England fans, right? And Christ, if they call this a crisis, I'd love to see them in Wales's position. You know, I'm looking forward to club rugby being back across the board. I'm going to Quins Bristol as a punter on Friday. It's the first time I've gone to live rugby in ages, like as a punter with no work commitments or, I'm not there for pod commitments or anything like that. Like I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to watching Dragons Cardiff. Like, I genuinely am.
Why?
Because it's
he likes taking
club
the
rugby.
piss.
No, it's club rugby. Like, genuinely, I just enjoy. I watched Quins women versus Saracens women over England Japan on Saturday because it means something. Because there's there is. I think the love of a club team, right, is different to the love of your international team. I think you're duty bound to support your international team because it's where you're from. Right, you support but your club, you choose your club in a way. Right, you look at the people of Blaen y Gwent, right? They all choose to support the Ospreys.
As I said, there are more people in Gwent to support Ospreys than the Dragons. It's an absolute disgrace. You
have an affinity to your club that's different to your affinity to your country. Right? Jamie, you and me have sat here through difficult times as fans, right? And I sat through the Alan Clark era, and I also sat through the Galactico era, right? But you have this affinity to your club, and I just can't wait for it to be back.
No, fair enough. I feel a bit rugbyed out by it all, but anyway, club rugby is back.
So let's move on. Trust me, I'm doubly so.
Let's move on to predictions then. So, Harley, let's start with you then. So, Glasgow Scarlets.
I'm going to go Glasgow by 12. It's the B, probably be the Glasgow B team, but the Glasgow B team is packed full of Argentinian internationals instead of Scottish internationals.
Okay, and Cardiff's Dragons, Cardiff by how many?
Cardiff by 5, I reckon.
That's being kind. Okay, Zebre versus Ospreys.
I reckon Ospreys by 8.
Ospreys by 8. Okay, James, your predictions, please. Glasgow Scarlets.
Glasgow by 12.
Okay, and then the derby, Cardiff Dragons.
Where is it? Is it Rodney Parade or Cap?
No, it's at Cardiff Arms Park. Boxing Day, you said.
Cardiff by 9.
Cardiff by 9. Okay, and then Zebre Ospreys.
Ospreys by 6.
Ospreys by 6. Okay, let's come to you then, Christian. Your predictions, please. Friday night, Glasgow versus Scarlets. How do you see that one going?
I got a bad feeling about this one. I think it's going to be 15. Glasgow by 15.
Glasgow by 15. Okay, and then
we should invite you back.
Saturday, Cardiff Dragons.
I think it's going to be close, but I say Cardiff by 4.
Cardiff by 4. Okay, and then to round off, Zebre versus Ospreys.
Ospreys by 6. Or did someone say that? Oh.
I said that, but it's absolutely fine.
You can still say
the same. Don't worry.
You can have the same prediction.
I'm bottom of the prediction league. It doesn't matter at this point.
What's the update on the prediction league, Ali? By the way, have you got that in front of you, or?
Yeah, I swear you only wanted it because just to confirm that you're still in the lead. So you've got 56 points. Yeah.
Am I?
You bastard. Just sent a message saying the painkillers are wearing off. Yeah, so it's Jamie in first, then me, then Lee, then James. Although there's only 1 point between Lee and James.
Happy days. Okay. Before we go, then a shout out for the feeder pods in the WRRAP family. So Harley,
your predictions, Jamie.
Yeah,
I haven't given mine. I do apologise. Okay. Glasgow Scarlets. I'll go Glasgow by 10. Cardiff Dragons. I'll go Cardiff by 9, and I'll go Ospreys by 8. All right. those are my predictions. I'm trying to wrap this up, Harley, because I know you got problems. So I am trying my best to wrap it up for you now. Let's talk about the feeder pods then that we got coming up. So, Harley, you're doing Cardiff Central this weekend, and you got a guest, haven't you?
Yeah. So, absolute legend, the blue and black, Ollie Robinson, is going to be on the pod tomorrow night. So, yeah, we'll look forward to some questions up. So, start sending them in. We'll put a post out in the morning.
Excellent. Look forward to that one. James?
We had no one this week. So we just interviewed Morgan Morris last week. Go and listen to that. It was a really great interview. We had a really great time with him. He's a lovely lad. We are in the midst of securing a player for next week, which, will be, it's another big senior player. So keep your eyes peeled on that.
Excellent. Chris, are you doing a Scarlet's pod this week?
Yeah, I've got Dwayne Peel lined up. He's going to outline his tactics for the Glasgow game this Friday.
Don't lose.
The Soft Runs and Sidesteps pod have been trying to get Dwayne Peel. They can't get him on. So if you actually had Dwayne Peel on your pod, that wouldn't go down well.
I'll put a good word in.
Brilliant. My Dragons pod, that's out now. Phil Steele was our guest. Really, really good. I could have talked to him for hours. He talks about his career in rugby, teaching, broadcasting. He talked really openly about his battle with depression and mental health. He was really, really good. I've had a lot of messages and DMs saying how much they enjoyed it and how they resonated with what Phil was going through. And I found out Gavin had, similar problem with it as well. So it was good to talk to him. Really nice guy. That's out now. That's on the podcast platforms and on this YouTube channel. Right then, gents, it's been a long one. I think that's a wrap. Thank you, James. Thank you, Harley. And thank you, Christian, for filling in for Lee. Much appreciated. Where can people find you if they want to check out more of your work?
On YouTube, the Welsh Sports Podcast, reacting and talking about Welsh rugby, but I do like sort of little mini documentaries about different people, Gavin Henson, Mike Ruddock's tenure and stuff like that. So I'm working on one about Lee Burns' career at the moment, so I'll be out in a few weeks, hopefully. But thanks for having me on, guys. I've been listening for a while, so it's a little bit surreal to come on and get to chat with you guys, so thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been really good to chat to you. Right then, that's it for tonight. We'll be back next week to look back on round 7 of the URC, but until then, take care and goodbye.